Okay, we are back and ready. The Hawks have become seagulls. They've come aggressive. They've picked up wins. They've stolen those chips, just like we talked about last week. But this time, they have a pretty big take to make. It is going to be against Sengoku, a relatively strong team. They're sitting second at the start of today, but obviously things could all change. And with that, Oak, I'll go to you first. Do you think the Hawks can potentially pick up a win here?
No way. As a huge Sengoku fan, I don't think it's plausible. No, I think to be honest, as you mentioned, they've been on the upswing, right? And I am very excited to see how Raina and Dasha continue to look as these games, you know, not just today, but as they keep going, because especially Raina has looked increasingly competent, which I am honestly loving. It's fantastic to watch this team, because I thought all the teams at the bottom would remain kind of down there, but their play is getting better and better. So yeah, absolutely, especially because, as you mentioned, Sengoku have been making some mistakes. We're seeing pools of champions being kind of taken advantage of, and I think I'm excited to see how draft comes in, because I think that'll be a big factor for how today's games go.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that admittedly, Sengoku have lost a lot of their games to top-level teams. It's not like they're losing mainly from the bottom. It is more from the top side of the roster. So maybe they are poised to kind of finish off the Hawks today. But saying that, the Hawks picking up wins, picking up momentum. They were a team that was very, very, very interesting coming to this game. People had high expectations for them. Are we maybe now starting to see that the expectations that we had actually come through to be true?
And I think a keyword that you've used there, J-Real, is momentum. Because you can talk about Sengoku maybe having their losses against some stronger teams and Hawks getting their wins against potentially weaker opponents. You're still getting wins. And even subconsciously, that does positively affect you. That does make you feel like you can push that next play a little bit further. It does make you feel like you can get those wins, get those advantages that maybe you couldn't do otherwise. And I think that Hawks are actually coming to Sengoku at a very good time. Like we've already mentioned, Sengoku, one of these other sort of super teams coming into the split that isn't looking as amazing as they have done quite at this moment. I think that you do need multiple members on Hawks to step up. I think Dasha needs to keep performing at this level. I think the bot lane, Liner plus Marble need to have a couple more good performances as well. But I definitely think that there are angles that the Hawks can attack this matchup. Yeah, and it's also a look that we have to think about this. The standings mean a lot today. Okay, so for the rest of the teams, there's been a little bit about standings and stuff here and there. Obviously, Axis could have maybe made a mark, but ups against the Giants of DFM. It's always going to be difficult. But for this one, if the Hawks pick up the win here, they do take 6th position. They do lock themselves, well, not lock themselves just yet, but they push themselves ahead into that playoff position. And that is absolutely huge in this later stage of the season. But also for Sengoku, we've already seen 2 teams push themselves to that 2nd place. If Sengoku want to remain in that race, they do need to pick up a win here. And do you think that that added pressure from both sides, Oak, is actually going to affect how we see the teams come out? Or do you think it's still too early for them to really get worried about it?
Well, you have to remember, this pressure has been on board for the last 3 or 4 game days now. I feel like Sengoku have been fighting for, or remaining and sitting in that 2nd place for a long period of time now. So if that's how they're feeling, well, they've been feeling like it for 2 weeks already and had, I mean, yeah, they dropped the games against Rascal Jester and DFM, but they've still picked up a couple of wins in the same position as being this you know, rag and tag 2nd place run. Whereas SoftBank Hawks, this is newer for them. This is the first time where we're like, oh, they could make playoffs. Oh, okay. And so, yeah, I think you're really on board with this new pressure coming in that could potentially affect them.
And for me, it's just like you think about at the start of this season, how there were people putting Hawks in 1st, 2nd, 3rd place, and everyone was going, yeah, that seems perfectly reasonable. And now they're starting to scale, they're starting to come online, but I had no idea that this team would be fighting for that final playoff spot at this point in the season. Yeah, I think that they've probably got the players where they can push forward and do it. But beyond that, it becomes difficult to see what the trajectory for this team is. So, yeah, picking up wins now, very, very important.
And we also have to look at some other things, right? We have to look at individual players as well. And I want to talk about Jet, but Oak, you had the news, you know. Let us know about Jet.
So I've been told today by relatively good sources to the LJL that Jet has hit top 100 KR, which, as we Middlecott me, pride ourselves on our knowledge on the KR ladder.
Yeah.
And so this is a huge bonus specifically for me, because now I have my favorite player in the league is now a renowned challenger Korean player. Not like he was ever that before. So this is great. And yeah, the matchup specifically against Dasher, this is one of those matchups where you kind of have to prove yourself. We still have the historic play of Dasher to look back upon and say, hey, this player has in the past been a powerhouse in the mid lane, and it remains true even through this team being relatively weaker in the ladder. And I think especially if Dasher decides to opt away from Ari, because recent Rice games have looked really, really, really good. So there we go. That's what I'm looking towards. And then also on top of that is maybe if Jet can get onto some assassin style champions, because off of those on the utility picks, have been struggling a little bit, but you know, look at the LeBlanc ban rate against Sengoku. I think it's 64%.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
If he's able to get onto these assassins that he's well known for, yeah, we saw in week 1. Akali, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I want to say we've seen these teams play before, right? And lightning has struck once, but will once make it strike twice. That's what I want to know, Mudokot. Jungle matchups. Let's talk about it. Is once going to be able to pick up the wins over Blank, or is Blank with his historical performance and obviously great? Well, I can't even think, but record, I could say. Yeah. Do you think that Blank can basically take it away from once, or does once have the edge in this one?
Well, if we're talking about sort of lightning striking once, I think that Volibear becomes a key pick in that regard, because the Lightning Bear, the Sky Splitter, one of these champions that can really match up against pretty much anyone in the early game. And that's where I think these junglers are going to have to try and get the most impact. Once and Blank have both been more geared towards that early game in their champion picks and their playstyles. I think Blank to a little bit of a lesser extent than once on the other side. But I think early game junglers, whoever can gank more before the sort of 10-minute mark, I think is how we judge the success in this matchup.
Okay, and it's going to have to be really quick from you, Oak. Oh, yeah. Bears love Honey. Honey's in the bot lane. Is Honey going to be able to beat Marble? That's the question I want to ask you quickly before we're going to be going into draft.
I think Honey, stand-up player, MVP of the last split, you know, and Marble, whilst he's looked pretty good so far, we talk, you know, these players don't seem to be too on board with each other. Honey and Enti are looking better with each other, so I'm leaning towards Honey and Enti here.
Well, it's seeming stacked for Sengoku. I will say that. It does feel like they do have the potentially favored side. I don't know. The odds seem pretty even, right? We did have a poll in Twitch chat. I do want to know. Okay, we don't have it anymore, so I can't tell you how that went. I don't know how. It was favored. I know that I dropped a lot of points off to the Hawks, so I'm hoping that they come out soaring through the sky and picking up this win. But do you guys think there's going to be Sengoku all the way, or do you think the Hawks have a chance to win this?
I think that when you've got players of the caliber of Dasher, Kanatsu, and then Marble to a sort of lesser extent on your team, I think there's always a shot. And that's sort of been the copium that we've been hanging on to regarding Hawks for this entire split so far. We're starting to see it more, and we're starting to see them play better. Do I think that they've scaled quite enough to take down Sengoku? I still don't think it's a 50-50. I still don't think it's a fair fight. Sengoku is still the favorites for me, but I wouldn't count Hawk as rank outsiders.
Yeah, and I'm doubling down on that. I think Sengoku are... I mean, they just seem to. Everybody knows their roles, and I love that. They each have different players who are playing different. I mean, Paz is just this huge brick wall in top lane, and he's loving it. Always, and it works so well for them. That's brilliant. No diversity needed there. You just do your thing. You do it well, and you find success. And I think even through the 2 losses that they found recently against DFM and RJ, they're still looking great.
Well, with that, we are going to be jumping into Pick and Ban, the final game of the day. Take it away, Middlecott and Oak.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. I love that guy, Oak. He's so brilliant. Like, he's nice. He's always like cool really fun-loving, like making the desk really exciting. It's great. Anyway, we are into Champions Select now. Sengoku on the blue side, Fukuoka SoftBank, HAWKS Gaming on the red. Saying that so you don't have to say it at any point this game. Oak. Rise being taken away from Dasher, we highlighted that as a key pick in the champion select. And my, oh my, look at this focus from the Hawks. Already 2 AD carry bans targeted at Honey.
I wonder if they're going to ban the Jinx as well to make it that trifecta and to try and limit some of these initial pickups. I think maybe they'll still go for the handshake. When you opt into something like the Caitlyn and the Zeri ban, maybe you're specifically trying to get onto these 2 meta champions. You've already got an idea on it. And the Silas banned away as well from Jet. So interesting enough, Sengoku actually opt towards the LeBlanc ban towards Dasher, giving him some respect there and the Silas in return. And a classic blind pick coming in with this Hecarim. We saw it last game. It's an early ganking jungler with pretty good early clears and a really impactful level 6 ultimate. Can build full tank. Everybody loves it.
Yeah, first time for once though, has tended a lot more towards that Lee Sin, but
yes,
getting his first Hecarim game of the split. HAWKS already breaking one of your rules, Oak. That is an Ahri locked in for Dasher.
I mean, it's a comfort pick for him. It's his most played mid lane at the moment, and whilst there is still conversation on whether or not it's a good like first rotation pick, or if it should be served more as a counter pick, Dasher's looked very comfortable on it, even if it hasn't served them lots of success in their past games. I remember they've been on this upswing, and when you pair that with the Aphelios handshake, which means you'll probably see the Jinx as well in first rotation for Sengoku. In my eyes, I'm not even considering the Ahri at the moment. I'm looking towards what a Blank and what a Reiner going to be on. Like, what are these picks that are going to play through the Ahri and try and facilitate some of these picks this champion's so well known for?
Yeah, you kind of end up in a very generic sort of state of things with your AD carries and your mid lane, as it feels like. The jungle and support are really the 2 picks that can warp a lot of things around the map. Yep. NT picking up the Nautilus for the 3rd time this splits, and Jet going to be piloting another one of these more control mage style champions in the Vex.
Yeah, brand new pickup for him, and it's obviously specifically targeted towards dealing with Dasher's Ahri. Vex finally seeing a little bit more spotlight. I'm enjoying this. 2 Vex games is nice because this champion has some really big highlight points, and when you pair it with such easy initial engage choices from this Nautilus and the Hecarim, well, there's the opportunity to look for multiple resets on the ultimate, and I think this is how you really want to be playing this champion. It's where you really unlock the potential damage output from this champion, so I'm loving it.
Rel locked in for Liner, and if you guys didn't know, there has been an official LOL Esports Big Play of the Week video made featuring a certain 4-man Magnet Storm from the HAWKS man in the support role. Liner looked good in the sort of couple games that he's played it so far this split, and paired up with the Aphelios as well. I'm seeing lots of potential for CC, lots of potential for pick. Actually, from both of these teams so far, there are so many tools to get fights started.
Yeah, I love this pairing up of the support on the AD, just because that Moonlight Vigil so easily done well with that Magnet Storm. Finally, we see a couple of bans coming in. So because Sengoku did not lock in the AD pick, we see the Kai'Sa banned away, and then we see the Jinx as well. I was hoping that they would be opting into that, which means now Sengoku needs to find something else that fills out that AD carry position.
And for me, Oak, I'm always a little worried when I see stuff like this, because Sengoku know that they could have first rotations Jinx. They could have taken it in their 2nd and 3rd pick as well. They've deliberately left it available, and HAWKS is happily obliged taking it off the table. I feel like you need to do that against Honey, but it makes me feel like Sengoku have got something a little bit spicy planned. I'd love to see something like the Volley Bear here from Blank, something that is very, very strong in the early game, can bully the Hecarim to a certain extent, and still provides a lot of value in team fights. Yes,
I think HAWKS have done an ideal draft on me. I think they've early picked this mid lane, which we know Dash is a constant threat. They've given counterpick to Kanatu, who we already see him as this potential carry threat, and it means he gets counterpick into this Graves. And finally, you mentioned it, there could be something very specific coming in for this AD carry, and Honey has opted into Xayah. First picked, a couple of first picks coming up for Sengoku here. First pick up in the split for him, and very specific role. It's dealing with dive threat. They knew that Reiner would be opting into this rel, and they've chosen an AD carry that handles Ahri, Volley Bear, and rel dive extremely well.
And then our top laners are swapping champions. Kanatsu opting towards this Gnar, which is Paz's most played, and Paz opting towards this Graves, which is Kanatsu's most played. So could end up in a situation where one player knows the other champion better than the other, and the other player knows the other champion better than the other, and the lane ends up being a little bit weird. But I love this Xayah pick, Oak, just to hone in on it a little bit more. This is something that we saw from Hybrid for CGA when he was getting focused out heavily in the ban phase. And Sengoku have taken a couple of notes from one of those other teams that is in that fight for second place.
The Xayah comes in slotted so well here because they knew that they could, not only would they, because as soon as you see these first 2 AD picks, they knew they pull additional picks, bans out, and this means that they get open field to draft the rest of the comp as cohesively as possible. And it means that they've got a lot of engage options coming out from this comp. You look at Jet specifically on the specs, is not only a counter pick to the Ari, but working really well with the team in tandem. But Honey is not a pickup point for this team. Very specifically, they're going to have to look towards Paz and Jet. And if any indicator about how this Graves has been building so far in the LJL, this is not going to be a squishy Graves. We're not going to be seeing the Eclipse. We're going to be seeing a Hull Breaker. And that means that Jet is the only pick point for this Magnet Storm combo. And it's quite hard to engage on that champion. Huge AoE fears coming out from this pick here. I'm a little bit lost for words right now.
I'm a little bit worried. I think Hawks have tools, right? Like they have tools. They've got pick potential. They got the rail. They got the Ari. They got the volleyball. They've got champions that can do things. But I think what we're sort of angling towards is that conceptually, the draft that Sengoku have put together, if we're talking about 5v5 scenarios, if we're talking about sort of the majority of fights that you are going to be taking, compositionally favored, as well as probably having the stronger players too. So it's going to be interesting whether Hawks are going to be able to stand up against Sengoku, who have been riding high so far this season. But we are going to be jumping into game now. Oak, let's get it.
I'm so excited for this. Yeah, I mean, you talked about it. This comp that Sengoku have opted to do, so self-serving and dealing with some of the later 5v5 points, but now we're looking towards Dasher. Very mixed bag of opinions on this player, this split, because repeatedly on this Ari, this team has actually they've had some good early games and then opted out. He is a big reason or a big facilitator for how this team can find success against such a counter-engaged comp, just because Charm is such an easy, it's like the solar flare that we see so often used. You can throw it out relatively safe and look for these pickups without being in fear of getting counter-engaged on us. Sengoku are opting in for a little bit of a late ward. They just want to scout out the volley better early pathing. I mean, you have to identify that Blank on this volley, he's trying to get some ganks in early.
And so spotting out where the volley bear is means that it's a lot more easy to counteract him, to play against him. We did actually see something a little bit spicy from Honey in the bot side, actually running the Airy on this side, which to me Oak would indicate a more lethality focused build.
Yes. So this champion, a couple of patches ago, she got some buffs. And it really highlighted this new build orientation coming in with the Eclipse, with the Lucidity boost. You opt into a lot of CDR and Q max first. This area would indicate that's the play they're going to be looking towards, and it's very, very lane focused. On top of that, you know that very specifically looking at SoftBank Hawks' engage options, going to be using that ultimate to defensively play herself. That can really set up for some really high damage feather, like the pull-in of the feathers. And I mean, if you go in the lethality build, that means that, especially if you get into that Sorolda Scrudge second or thirds, a lot of damage going onto Reiner and Blanca. They try and engage onto you.
It's just doubling down into that sort of counter-engage identity that the Xayah does have. Not only are you ulting to provide yourself a little bit of safety, you can do that with the crit build. You are also ulting so that when you pull those feathers back, it is doing a massive amount of damage. Blank was spotted on that ward, placed by Sengoku at the level 1, so they know that the volley bear is pathing more towards this top side, and Paz is going to respond with what looks like a ward of his own just by that tri bush to provide himself a bit more safety.
It's a little bit worried about that. I mean, normally these junglers will opt towards this 4 clear, and it seems like we're seeing this here, especially from Once, because Sengoku have opted towards a lot of pushing lanes. Once isn't going to have a lot of access in the early, so wouldn't be surprised to see these junglers just handshake out, take the top and bot scuttle respectively, and look towards second clear as maybe an opportunity to look for ganks.
Funky is Once is going to be taking bot side scuttle, and Blank is going to be responding with the scuttle on the other side of the map. Does scuttles have a name, Oak? I know that Rift Herald does, but have these guys got names?
I don't think scuttle's significant enough, unfortunately. It's not a...
Hold on. Do you have a hamster?
I do have a hamster.
Does the hamster have a name?
Yeah, my hamster has a name. Okay, have you read? Oh, I can't be talking about it.
Can't be talking about that because Marble is being forced away, burning the Flash. Ignite used by NT, but that's a favorable summoner trade for Sengoku.
I think I get to talk about my hamsters now. I'd like to talk about my hamsters.
Can we talk about your hamsters? Yeah. Okay.
Have you read? There's a Swedish folktale book. Like it's like a children's book, and there's an animated TV series as well called Moomin and Snufkin, or I don't know what it's called, but it has these characters, and one's a little white bear and one's a little guy with a little hat, and they're called Moomin and Snufkin, and that's what they're named after. If anybody has it, there's a little TV show. It's very seen as very aesthetic, like what would you call it, like cottagecore. Do you know what cottagecore is?
No. It's like sort of like that cute, like
and it's like it's like a TV show with like a very cult like favorite part, and there's loads of plushies for them and stuff. And so my hamsters are called Moomin and Snufkin, or they were. Snufkin disappeared. I don't think I've ever heard a story where a hamster dies in a regular way. Either they disappear or they are killed in a horrific accident of some kind. My hamster just disappeared.
It just disappeared.
Literally, yes. I don't know where it went.
Just like Shaco or something. like what?
Yeah, somehow got out of the cage, and I couldn't find.
Might be a little caught here. Blank's gonna flash forward, flash into the crash down for line of the CC chain. Is beautiful, and it's first blood to the Lolbear.
That's what we wanted to see from Blank. Get on the volley bear, get on something with early lane presence, and when you combine that with Reina, they pick up the first kill, and it's also opting into the first Drake as well. Ocean's a bit of a hard opt into solo, so Reina's going to move up and leash him that as well. Very kind of him.
Wonderfully done, and it's an early advantage for the Hawks, which is what we wanted to sort of see from them. NT forgot to sweep out that ward, and so ends up falling down, but not game breaking just yet. I feel like Hawks need a couple more picks. They need a couple more kills on these key carries of Dasher and Marble, and then I think we can start talking about this game in a significantly more positive light.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there is that they're kind of disenabling this Sire lane just a little bit. And I think you're seeing there, Zai got an early reset in with the tier. Even with that tier, I would assume that Zai is going to be trying to push CS lead as much as possible in this lane with repeated Qs, just whittling down the HP bars. So finding a kill like that just gives a little bit of space to find an effective reset for Marble and Reina. And hopefully not cause too much CS loss.
Hopefully not. Liner just... Hold on, wait. I love when a support does this, man. It just feels so good. Like they actually care about me and they actually want me to succeed.
Junglers too. As a mid lane player, if a jungler freezes a fat wave in front of my turret instead of taking it, I'm just like, thank you, kind
just like,
soul.
You just propose to them at that point.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's a marriage angle.
Well, unfortunately, I'm a lonesome figure in the League of Legends world.
Oh.
No duo partners to be found.
That's sad, man. That's sad.
I'm sorry. Whilst we see this early game open up a little bit for SoftBank Hawks, Vision has remained relatively neutral. I like that we're seeing pink boards finally come out in the early. Big thing is this pixel brush gets warded out by SoftBanks even, and you're seeing Vision generally opted towards his bot side because I'm assuming as soon as Blank is getting that level 6 point, remember 3 camps in his bot side, so should be picking up 6 fairly soon. That's going to be their focus, is looking towards Honey and NT, specifically NT, before they hit level 6 to pick up another kill before the Zaya ultimate gets online, and then suddenly that lane becomes basically undivable.
I mean, we're talking about level 6 points there. Level 6 just hit for once as well, so the Onslaught of Shadows will be available. Gromp's going to reset there. Not a big fan of Blank there.
Doesn't care. He got 6. Doesn't care.
He got 6. Doesn't care. Just runs bot lane. Can make this a 3v2 if he so chooses. Once instead opting for a little bit of a counter invade. Can clear up these Raptors very, very quickly with the Hecarim.
Yeah, and with that knowledge that Wraiths haven't been taken, as well as that red being off, once and the rest of Sengoku are going to know that Blank is on bot side. And so I'm assuming Honey, now that Honey's got this level 6, suddenly Blank has to walk away. It's no longer an option for him. So they were really just waiting out that level 6 point. Instead, Blank looking towards mid lane as Herald started by Sengoku.
And I think that's one of the things that has been hurting Hawks so far this split is these little inefficiencies, missing a timing one place, taking a little bit too long on a play in another, and those can really add up over the course of a game, over a course of the split. As it stands, Sengoku with a little bit of a late trade. Hawks were able to pick up that first Drake, but the Herald going in favor of the blue side team.
It's like poetic. As soon as you mention it, they do it again. They just barely missed the reset time and the rotations. You see Reiner just a little bit too late to that party there. And so Herald gets picked up for Sengoku, and they can look to opt into, I mean, Graves has had Paz, I got there eventually, has repeatedly had this shove in top side. They can opt in for first target there. On top of that, the Zaya going to keep going with this build. You see, finally, that serrated Dirk picked up. This is where the lane gets a little bit tough for Marble and Reiner. Can they look for early plates to potentially set up a first turret?
Yeah. That serrated Dirk basically turns you into Talon, but ranged.
I mean, pretty much. You've got the, instead of rakes, it's feathers. Or what does Talon throw?
It's not rakes.
Blades? It's called rake.
I know it's called rake, but that doesn't mean that it is a rake.
He's not throwing physical, he's not a farmer.
I'm just picturing like Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons just walking around on all the rakes, and that's what playing against Talon is like.
They should do a skin. That's another Halloween skin. I feel like they always get their best ideas from casters.
I want to see. I know that Fortnite does this. They do a lot of those sort of pop culture crossovers, and I'm wary about them because I feel like you can do them well and you can do them badly. But I want Sideshow Bob Talon now. That's happening.
Honestly, I think Fortnite's really nailed that market because they have literally everybody. They have Spider-Man, they have Jinx and Vi. Like they've got everybody. A little bit of early vision coming in from Hawks. They're starting towards second Drake. Remember, they picked up the first one, so maybe they're identifying that as a bit of a win condition for them. Remember, once the second Drake gets unlocked, we're going to see which soul it is, and that's so important for identifying whether or not you actually want to be playing towards it, whether it's going to be that Infernal and Hex taking, like, oh boy, this is really big, we can play off this is a win condition for us, or if it's Cloud and you go, well, this helps us, but it's not really anything to scoff at. Okay,
so we have Herald Summon in the bot lane, so this will donate a couple of plates over towards Honey, get them more accelerated towards that Eclipse.
The bigger thing is it forces, look at this, the clumping. They have to be forced off the Drake, and they find the fight. It's huge.
That is a massive wombo combo. Marble is already dead, and Blank is going to be the next one to fall down. Honey forced to flash away from the tower, but 2 kills for Sengoku and the turret plates and the Drake. This is a massive play for them.
I thought Sengoku were going to play it slow. They were forcing Hawks off of this Drake so they could get the vision back on it and take it for themselves after they've rotated to stop this first turret in the bot side. But no, they spot the opportunity. NT flashes over, picks up that. Fantastic. Yeah, they're going to secure this second Drake here, which means 1 for 1 for this team. And they also got 4 plates in the bot side, all going directly to Honey. And that has linked in very nicely because he has managed to pick himself up an Eclipse. And yeah, you get to see it here. Really good macro choices coming up from Sengoku to start with, and then just really on the ball with it. This single point of vision is all they have on it, and then bam, flash forward with the Onslaught of Shadows. Honey's there to follow up the damage, and they all just unionize. Brilliant.
Yeah, that was honestly beautiful, and it's kind of characterized Sengoku as just one of these teams that has been very, 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 very good. They make plays like this, they're all on the same page together, and it really pans out for them. Once again, though, have to caveat, is only a 1.4 thousand gold lead, and that's going to be reduced as Marble is able to wail on this tower for a little bit. Liner thinking about going around the other side, but yeah, 2 plates funneled over, and that gold lead, yeah, basically dead even at this point into the game. One of these teams is going to have to make a couple more plays if they really want to secure a meaningful advantage.
Yeah, bigger thing to be looking at right now is mythics on the board. We see 3 for Sengoku, and this is really their tempo play right now. Because they have these mythics on board, they need to be trying to use these as quickly as possible to extend that rather small gold lead into something more substantial. So we're going to be keeping eyes on NT and Once to see how they can use their team's damage to facilitate more fights, look towards potentially first turret in the bot side.
That has been where all the action has been so far this game. Top lane has been a bit of an island this game. And for good reason. Paz, Kinatu kind of just been trading up against each other. It is actually the Immortal Shieldbow Graves, which is something that I know that we weren't really anticipating to come out. What do you think the logic is there, man?
Well, I mean, you're looking at not only do Hawks want to just play forwards, which means that you want to be as tanky as possible, and I think specifically towards the Shieldbow, it's the Negan build that people have been or used to call it. I don't think people call that. As NT's hex flashing forwards.
Yeah, and Once is going to be here as well. Once again, we are seeing repeat plays being made in the bot lane. Blank going forward with the Stormbringer, and Kinatsu TPing in to find nothing. Sengoku pulled the trigger once more, and we weren't talking about top lane, but it's becoming impactful now because Paz is going to pick up so many plates here.
Yeah, still has to. I mean, his plates are gone. But no, that's better for them because it means instead of these plates, the turret is now unguarded. He can go straight looking towards his first turret. Doesn't opt into that because he wants to reset time, and I think we get to see a little bit of how Sengoku are going to be playing these fights. NT is very on edge to try and find these picks because they have those mythic tempos, and he does it here. They look for NT, and then Reiner tries to do the Magnustorm. We're seeing the prophecy of this comp as Honey immediately ultis it, and as soon as Hawks maybe try and find the continuation of the fight, that pullback comes in and snares down two members of Hawks, and they really don't have any response.
Tell you what, teams have been playing around bot lane pretty well so far today.
Enjoying it.
Nicely executed. It's nice to have cleanly executed League of Legends because sometimes the LJL can get a little bit fiestery, but a
bit spicy.
A little bit spicy. It's been good so far. I've been enjoying it. We are seeing items completed now on the side of Hawks, sort of catching up in terms of those mythic marks. We've got that Turbo Chem Tank for Blanca, the Hull Breaker for Kinatsu, which has been pretty much the go-to on Nar as your rush.
At default, so much lane prio with it. You get the concrete tower push if you're left by yourself, which I think is Kanato's goal for this game, really only TPing in when he has that mega, when he has the opportunity to use that ultimate. And quickly talking on Paz, as we maybe see a dive in the top side. Once is trying to find it, but I think just getting space for that Herald to maybe pick up the second turret gold specifically onto Honey to really funnel the gold into him. Would be surprised if we see Paz opt into a BT second instead of the Hull Breaker, looking towards as much life steal as possible, because you look at Hawks, if they aren't able to find that clean engage and pick off Paz before he's able to respond, well, he's going to life steal all that back repeatedly and function as pseudo frontline for this comp to find extended fights if Honey isn't able to find the damage right at the start on the key members like Dasher or Marble.
And it will have to be a pseudo frontline because Sengoku, they don't really have a pure tank on their lineup. It is the Glacial Nautilus, and whilst once is going towards that Chem Tank, and I imagine that Deadman's plate with his next item, it is the Phase Rush. Hecarim isn't a particular tanky champion just in terms of the way that his kit works, so I think Sengoku, they've been good so far, but they're going to have to continue playing around spacing very, very carefully if they're not if they want to avoid getting just blown up by the Hawks.
Big thing now as top lane tier 1 gets unlocked, we're going to see Sengoku hopefully move away from that lane as much as possible and try and establish some vision around this Drake. They got the second Drake. We see that Infernal Soul is picked up, and that's a big win condition for both teams because we talk about it all the time, but both these teams are looking for that first engage. Infernal really helps with finding those picks onto maybe more of the tankier members of each team, and Sengoku are really on the ball to immediately get this wave shove in mid. They know that top side's free and they have Paz on TP, so second Drake for them now and first Infernal of the game.
I like it. A bit more of a damage focus, Soul, and it means that the explosive team fights that we envision that we will be getting with all the engagements that we've already talked about are going to be that much more explosive. And so I'm anticipating that the next Drake coming up in 5 minutes time, and probably every subsequent Drake, is going to be hotly contested by both of these teams because of how impactful they can be.
Honestly surprised we didn't see more of it from Hawks for that Drake itself, because they had Kanatu on the bot side. Instead, as they aggress into Kanatu, just left Mini. And having to use the Onslaught Shadows to disengage because they didn't have the appropriate vision to go for that aggression. That gives a little bit of a tempo upswing for Hawks to maybe look for a player themselves, and they're hovering in Pixel, but this pink is really smart from Sengoku. They know they haven't poked that, so they're just sitting in that bush. They are aware of it, and they get spotted out and poked out there.
I feel like Honey didn't need to do that. I think that you can bait that a little bit longer, just sort of draw out their suffering in that pixel books, waiting for someone to walk by and for someone to get picked off, but ultimately just didn't end up happening in the end. Something I do want to highlight is that Honey is very, very close to actually completing the Manamune, and look at the stacks on his tier, already at 354. This is going to be the Manamune pretty much directly into that Muro Mana transformation. So after this base, this Sire is going to be lethal.
And the build only keeps getting better after that point. Once Muraman is unlocked, obviously a lot of additional damage onto squishy members, and hopefully Honey will be pairing that up with a Sororda's Grudge first for the maximum amount of penetration you can get at this point in the game. I mean, a lot of people talk about Collector versus Lord Doms and Grudge, but these percentage pen items normally slot in better as a second item or a third item if you only have one pen item before that, just because at this point in the game, people are going to be sitting over that 40 armor point, and really that's where that effective pen comes into factor.
It is quite strange how quickly sort of like that percentage pen does become sort of quite useful.
That's the interesting conversation, because Collector gives 20 more AD than Lord Doms, and that's really where people start talking about, okay, well, how much more effective damage than that is. But I think there was a recent thing with Void Staff second from in NA, because Freak was saying how it was bad, and one of the EG analysts pulled out a chart and did the damage for all the different potential second items that Syndra can get in a against the comp that they were facing, and Void Staff was better than the majority of them.
And with itemization, you can end up with over-indexing on numbers sometimes, and oftentimes just like the comfort and the feel of the item, and the small things like extra HP here and there can actually mean a lot more than people give it credit for. So I always do like those item discussions. You end up in very, very interesting conversations. You get to understand what people prioritize, and what Sengoku are currently prioritizing is this mid lane. 4 members posted up in there. They want to get down this tower as soon as possible so they can push their vision lines even further. Once is maybe thinking about a dive here, but it could be risky.
Nutty's on the side. They're dancing for it ever slowly. Reiner could look for the engage here, but the tier 1's picked up. Sengoku have no reason to stay anymore. They get to walk up for free, and that's all 3 tier 1s picked up for Sengoku. They're very happy with that, and that's going to be right on timer for them to get their resets in, rotate this vision. They pushed around the mid lane, now back towards this dragon. As once we've hit 20 minutes, the real big thing to be looking towards is this this 4th Drake even getting picked up, spawning in a couple of minutes time.
1 minute? I suppose that's
1 minute?
couple. I suppose that's one.
Is it one?
It says the Drake is spawning in a minute.
One now. Okay,
are you okay? What?
No, I lost it a little bit. I couldn't find the dragon timer on the screen. I was like, where are you finding this information? You prophet.
Do you know what? That's fair enough. That's reasonable. Just
I
very,
thought you'd
very
been
smart.
counting down the entire time, like 4:55, 4:54.
You're just like there in all chat, just spamming the timers, like. But as it stands, despite that mid lane tower going down in favor of Sengoku, they're the ones who are actually being left out of the river at the moment. 30 seconds until that Drake spawns, so maybe the Hawks are a little bit early, but if they can find engage in this mid, then sure they won't be thinking that they are too early at all. I love when we get these scenarios, both teams just sort of looking at each other, waiting for that overstep, waiting for that single mistake that could be punished.
Really important to try and get Kanatu's mega early, and they just don't get it in time. So Kanatu's going to be able to be really eager to find that right transformation. As Sengoku, they're slowly walking in. They have that mid lane tier 1, so they get the wave push, and it forces SoftBank Zach a little bit. But seeing the dance start, and I'm really, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I think Reiner's going to be looking for a big engage. I think that Once is going to be looking for a big engage. The word is engage. How many people can you catch? How important are they? Yeah, locking up a tank is going to feel pretty good until the AD carry in the mid lane on the backside deals so much damage to you. They're going for it though as Reiner dives into the back line. Jet misses the ultimate, so can't get into the fight soon enough. The Drake has been taken by Blank, but the fight is all Sengoku. Marble is trying to cut himself away. Red and White means don't fight, and he is doing a damn good job standing tall, but will eventually fall. Drake for the Hawks, but the fight all Sengoku.
3 for 1 in total, and I think it was so close for SoftBank Hawks there as they find that initial gauge onto Honey, but they can't pair it with any follow-up. Honey gets the ultimate just up in time, and the big thing to look out for is look at the Honey flash. So well handled, and the rest of Sengoku get free to find some really big damage here. Jet always sitting on the sidelines. As they find this initial engage, Jet is trying to find it themselves, and even though this ultimate flubs, a lot of potential damage comes out. So Honey finally here uses the flash over the wall as Paz you saw him fight Graves in Dragon, and you can see why there a huge amount of burst comes out, and Marble desperately trying to find that response, but it wasn't really enough.
Not able to make it work in the end, and this is why Honey's so good, man. Like, he can just play on the limit. He can deal as much damage as possible. Look at that, 3,600. Thank you very much, Graphics team, for pulling up that one, and Paz as well, standing tall, doing a fair bit of damage himself.
Yep. And that was all through that AoE that you found in Dragon Pit. That Q combined with the ulti, even with this build, nothing to scoff at, and a lot of burst came out from that champion.
He's rushed prop by once, but Reiner able to get the knock-up, maybe baiting in the Hecarim here, as Blank is going to immediately engage onto Jet on the other side, but the fears come through, and HAWKS have overextended. Dasher is going to be the first kill of the fight, as Blank is looking to index down, looking to trade one back, and continue through the rest of it. Actually uses that Storm Surge and is somehow still staying alive. He will eventually fall down now, as Kinatu is the only member of the HAWKS left in this fight. Marble and Reiner have abandoned him for the mid lane, and the Gnar will be going down. Another 3-for-1 for Sengoku.
Once leaves and just a smidgen of HP. Yeah, they find the 3 kills, which is fairly good, but unfortunately for them, this is going to slow down that Baron just a little bit now. We see Jet off the board and once having to reset, so they're going to pick up this top lane tier 1 as NT is trying to find people. Looks like they opting for the reset though, and he doesn't find the reset, doesn't stop the reset in time, so only this top lane tier 2 going to get picked up, and does slow down this Baron somewhat, so it kind of net neutral for both teams.
Not the worst thing in the world. I will just say, though, as we come into this replay, that this felt like a little bit of a fight over nothing for Sengoku. HAWKS trying to bait as well as they can, but not able to get it initially onto the Vex, and then it just gets turned around on them.
Yep, they just didn't have enough damage to pick off Jet in time, and even though Plank does a fantastic job of living for a very, very long amount of time, it doesn't really amount to anything because the team's just not in position. It feels like a very weird aggression from HAWKS, but as you mentioned, also from Sengoku, they over eager to find that fight there when really they should be pressuring with this Baron. They continue to do so now. They still got Baron and 4 members. They pick up the second tier 2 and unlock a little bit more of this standard gold. And you were seeing now finally they're taking a lot of control over this vision, really trying to restrict as much as possible as they're hopefully looking towards this bot lane tier 2 as well before the Baron falls.
Yeah, there's a CB-LOL caster, goes by the name of Rudy, does a lot of stuff actually, very, very cool guy. Likes to call this first Baron the economy Baron. This is one for clearing up the structures on the map. This is the one to get you those influxes of gold. Then it comes to the second Baron, is the one where you need to be taking down these inhib towers, these inhibs, and trying to pressure and end the game. Sengoku have built up a fairly generous gold lead for themselves, 7,000 in their pockets, with Drake spawning in a minute's time. Soul point for both of these teams. The HAWKS, they don't want to let them spend that gold, they don't want to let them reset, and that's why Blank is running forward with the chem tank. Will be forced away with a couple of shots to the back of his head, but this has prompted Sengoku to actually stay around a little bit longer, and maybe Dasher and Co could capitalize on this. Although I say that, the double fears coming out. Ryder once again diving into the backline with the Magnet Storm, but he isn't able to find the engage that he really wants, and will be the first casualty of the fight. Kinatsu will fall as well. Here comes once as he's diving forward with the onslaught of shadows, and HAWKS, they played with fire. They were like Icarus. They flew too close to the sun, and Sengoku, they clean up the fight with Blank the only one left alive.
Absolutely on the knife's edge. Blank, the main real front line for this comp, gets taken apart in terms of the HP, and then Sengoku, they understand, they realize they can play the same role that HAWKS were just trying to play. They try and find the HP, and even better, they get 4 kills. They're going to pick up Blank as well. That's the inhib. Earliest reset times of Ryder. Can they even look for the win here?
Maybe. Blank was just looking to thin the minion wave, just trying to take that down so the buff doesn't get taken off the towers, but it's not going to be enough. The death timers are just too long, and HAWKS, they had a couple of good moments, but Sengoku showed their class and take themselves to 8 wins.
And we came into this series questioning whether HAWKS could do it, and whilst we saw once again it's the same thing, so close to success, but unfortunately not finding the right timers, and very, very well played to Sengoku, cementing themselves once again in the second place position and really showing that there's the upper terms of the league, and then we're seeing these teams forming the lower levels as well.
Yeah. Only a three-way tie for second, though, so...
Only a three-way.
That's good.
For the fourth day in a row?
Fourth day in a row. It's getting a little bit crazy, man. I'm not too sure what's going on at the top of this standing, but... To learn a little bit more about what happened in this game, we're going to be popping to the analyst desk after a short break. Don't go anywhere.
When we started this game coverage, Bird was the word. I will say it still kind of is Zaya. There was the pickup win there for the ADC. They did make it work. And also, I will say Zaya came in pretty clutch in a few moments. And one of those I want to talk about is the early tower diving, the early fighting that Sengoku were able to pull off. And maybe that's just kind of the new style that LJL has found.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of getting deja vu. I feel like we've been to this place before. The tower dives that we've seen from both of the last two games in the bot side have just been very, very cleanly executed, which is kind of what you'd expect from a DFM and kind of what you'd expect from a Sengoku, who have been a DFM light at a lot of points. And I think coordination is a really big word here, because Sengoku, they showed that they were coordinated. They were often playing around each other very, very well. But for the Hawks, coordination, I think, was severely lacking at several key points.
Yeah, they were just a little bit behind on plays, and it's been the name for them this season is that they're almost there, but they just don't have quite the pairing ups of players to really deal with over aggression from the enemy team, overplay, or themselves set themselves up for proactive play. It's unlucky.
Yeah, maybe next time. Maybe what they need is to maybe switch up to another bird. Maybe they need to go for a Falcon angle. Falcon's obviously notoriously fast. Peregrine diving in at 119.
Big fans of Maltesers.
So it's a sentiment of maybe that's the switch up that they need. Maybe they need to pick up that pace a little bit more and start to try and find these wins. So who knows? But I don't know, Hawk's pretty capable. But either way, they aren't finding wins and they need to sort something out. And I want to talk about the team fighting as well. It felt like Sengoku really just nailed it. Like they were ready to play. They knew exactly what they wanted to do and they set themselves up very nicely.
Yeah, I think it was a more traditional drafting style that came in clutch combined with this counter pick and the AD carry that really just worked so well for them because we saw some very core LJL picks come in. The Graves, soft and picked in the top lane, paired with this Hecarim, which you've been seeing a lot of pressure on B1 right now. People are slowly opting away from the Jinx. And then when you combine this with them pulling 4 AD carry bands and opting into that Xayah to deal with this counter engage option coming out from Reina and Blank, it was just it seemed to pair up so well. And we even saw some flubs come out from Sengoku there in some team fights, and they still pulled it off so well from some actual outplays on top of that. So this comp was very nice to watch.
I think for me, it felt like HAWKS were drafting for an AD carry that didn't exist. Like they were taking all of these AD carries off the board. They were going into this very dive-focused composition, which can work against stuff like the Jinx, stuff like the Caitlyn, where getting on top of them and taking them out of the fight early is easier necessarily, and also very, very important for the composition's win conditions. We saw this from CGA in the previous game day, and we've seen it again today. Pivoting down into that Xayah is such an effective counter to dive-based compositions, and honestly, I feel like HAWKS were kind of baited from minute one.
Yeah, it did feel like they tried to find wins, but it just felt like Sengoku were just ahead pretty much most of the time. And then obviously building up the lead, it becomes increasingly more and more difficult to win those team fights. And Sengoku, I think they showed a bit of class as well. Yes, they made a few blunders here, but I think they closed out pretty clinically as well, which I guess is a question mark that they had in the earlier parts of the season.
Yeah, and we've been kind of watching them tentatively over the last couple of weeks as well because of their play against DFM and Rascal Jester, and specifically Rascal Jester, because DFM, especially today's game, they're still looking very, very strong. But Rascal Jester, that's the other team that they're contesting for second place, and that drop was like, okay, and it was quite a significant game as well. And we were like, okay, well, how are Sengoku standing? This just reiterates where my mind, all those doubts in my mind are going, no, they're still a contention for second place team. We're still in BO1 territory as well. And I'm just looking towards how teams are going to continue to adapt within draft. I mean, I love talking about draft, but within draft specifically, we saw this fantastic come out. And I'm looking towards playoffs now. I'm like, okay, well, are they going to keep this up? Because this can really, really facilitate winning against better teams if you can draft like this.
Yeah, and I think this is the question mark for a lot of teams right now. Obviously, can you take on the top team? Sengoku losing to Russell Justice and DFM isn't the biggest problem, considering that they are deemed as to being potentially number 1 and 2. HAWKS not being able to beat anyone above Axis, probably a much bigger question mark. But with that, that's going to be another win for Sengoku. They're going to be joining the other two teams in the second place. That is both CGA and Rascal Justice. But let's retrospectively go back through these games. We're going to actually go them in reverse order. So we obviously did watch DFM versus Axis very recently. Again, not a very strong performance from DFM. We kind of covered it most of the points. They're just looking too strong. Axis, just an unfortunate matchup today, to be honest. But going over to V3 versus CGA, Middelkoff, obviously you are the big CGA fan. A little bit of a longer game than expected from CGA.
Yeah. So maybe not necessarily longer than expected. I did say in chat, guys, you're all predicting CGA to win. That means they're going to lose. And it wasn't quite a loss today, but a 37-minute game against V3 Esports, I don't think is something that you're going to be particularly happy about. We still have strong performances from Hybrid and Nema. Kassin with a Rek'Sai pick. Conceptually, I really, really like it into the Jin Zhao. There were a couple of times where I feel like it could have been executed a little bit better. There were a couple of ults thrown at LeBlanc clones, but generally, I'm happy to write off this game as kind of CGA being CGA, but ultimately, they still get the win. It's still 3 points or whatever the equivalent is for a League of Legends league. I don't know. It's a W. V3, it looked better from them. Washidai, once again, having a strong performance on the Camille. I think that this is a particular pick and a particular player that if V3 want to grab a win this split, that they would do well to enable. But aside from that, not really too much else impressed me from them this game.
Yeah, and then going on to the first game of the day as well. Burning Core versus Rascal Jester. It's a tough one, right? It was a match of the top two. Rascal Jester's looking very strong. And Oak, I know you had a few takes on this one.
Well, I really laughed that they were just trying to ban out recap so hard. We saw 5 mid lane bans come out. Just want to mention that. And actually, I think they had a fantastic response, Rascal Jesters, with this Lissandra coming in to potentially deal with the Akali. And even though in early game, I mean, it looked quite rocky. Early game, normally people look towards Akali being bullied within the early because she got lane given away for free. We were like, well, how's this going to paint up a mid game? And Burning found themselves a lead. And then they didn't because the Lissandra mid game kicked in, and it turns out you can't ban recap. No. You can get rid of his Veigar. That's a good ban. And then maybe you should stop there and consider other bans instead, because then the cohesion of this Rascal Jesters comp came in really, really big. They hit that 15-20 minute point and started finding these successful fights, and it really just kind of went from there.
Yeah, and it was an eventful day of games. Right now we can look at the standings once again, and we can have a quick look. Right now, top three of number 2 are CGA, Rascal Jesters, and Sengoku, all holding that spot still. Burning have been knocked down. DFM pushing themselves further ahead. Obviously, number 6 spot as well, Axis and Fukuoka SoftBank HAWKS are sitting there waiting for themselves to find a little bit of a difference to make it into the playoffs. And then V3 is solidly sitting at the bottom. I will say, just coming back to the very last game of the day, I think the biggest question mark and the biggest problem for SoftBank HAWKS right now is the fact that they're not winning against these top teams, right? They're not beating anyone above Axis so far, and they now have a really rough schedule. They have DFM next, then they have Burning Core, then they have Rascal Jesters, and then they finally have Axis. So they're going to have 3 tough games before they basically have a must-win game coming up.
They're in a very, very difficult position right now, and I think that today was big for them. This was if we can get a win here, then we put ourselves a bit more in the conversation. We build a little bit more of that breathing room. But like you were talking about, that Axis game coming up in a week or whatever's time becomes so much more important, because I don't see a way that they're beating the likes of Rascal Jester or DFM. They've got a chance against Burning Core, but I still think that they're a little bit too strong for them.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, we saw how they played today against Sengoku. And Sengoku, I mean, within the top 3 second place teams, it has looked a little bit odd because they've been dropping games to each other. And Rascal Jester is the only ones who we've seen concretely not drop games against the other second place teams, but they have now. And it's like,
it's all a bit weird.
What's going on, really? But I think if they couldn't really find any substantial, today's game wasn't, I wouldn't say that close. And Burning Core have looked better than Sengoku.
I don't even know. It changes day by day, honestly.
It's just, and that's the thing. I think the one thing we can say is that these top 2, specifically Sengoku and Burning Core, have looked inconsistent in their second place standings, and that's the one way you can find a win. That, and maybe if they can look, because we've seen some really competent drafts come out today, something like exciting counter picks, and maybe some more interesting 5 bans. Maybe if some people decide to draft more cohesively, we find that kind of counter draft opportunity, maybe that's an opportunity for Banks to find a win.
Yeah, and that is going to be it from us today.
Hold on, J-Real. I got to say something. I've got to derail the broadcast. I like to think I'm a little bit of a new kid on the block in terms of casting, but today actually marks the 1-year anniversary of my first ever on-camera cast. I just thought that was really cool, and I tell you what, that I couldn't have wished for 2 better people to sort of have this broadcast alongside. So yeah, it's just great being here, guys, and
you're fantastic.
Lots of love to everyone that has ever supported me, and all the people here at LJL who have been a fantastic home for me, and hopefully a home for me for many years to continue.
Big love to Middlecourt. Obviously, shout out to all of those that work with Middlecourt and know that he's a great caster, a great guy, and a lot of fun. But with that, we are going to be ending. Obviously, show Middlecourt some love on Twitter for his 1-year anniversary. And all I got to say is that we got to look to Drake. We got to look to Drake for some advice. Right now, LGL sitting, they're basically all saying we're top 2, but we're not 2. We'll find out who finally does make that statement true. But they're putting in that work. But all I can say is it's over. We're leaving. We're gone.